Ready? It's found in Luke 9 and Matthew 16. This is Jesus telling all that were listening. If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross daily. Daily. Not just once, not when you just give your life over and you are reborn. It's take up your cross daily and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. Now, I don't know why I needed to speak that before I actually got onto the topic that actually leads into that verse. But I want you to hold on to that. And one of the questions that I want to ask you, that if you're distracted by this, because there's paper on the thing and you need to write it down after everything that's come, I want you to maybe even put down, what does your daily cross look like? What is it that Jesus is asking you to pick up daily? Is it something that's happened in the past? Is it something that you're worried about in the future? Is it something of a habit? Is it something that is built into your nature that you need to take up, to give up your own way of dealing with that, dealing with life in general, dealing with actually leaking Jesus, going, I will never measure up to him? Well, that's the devil speaking. Take up your cross daily. What does that look like for you personally? You don't need to share it amongst yourselves. This is just an opportunity for you to turn around and go, you may have done it in the past, but maybe this is an opportunity for you to go, well, I intentionally want to actually write these down so that it is a reminder each day that this is what I'm taking. This is what I'm giving so that I can save my life. Building creative environments to bring the hope of Jesus. Now, the last 2 weeks we've gone through two of our attached things to that vision. And I don't know about you, I believe that this vision is more than just words on a piece of paper, more than something that you hear me say very regularly. And I'm hoping that I don't annoy you with it, but I love it. Building creative environments to bring the hope of Jesus. It does not limit us. It does not limit God. It's the ability to be able to step into environments in his presence and go, what are you up to here? Can I join God? What is it that you want me to create? Can I join that? Instead of going, I need to do this so that God can be seen. No, he's seen everywhere. He's seen through our actions. He's seen through our postures. And we are invited on a journey. In our households, in our workplace, in our schools, in our conversations, in our community. We are invited into what God is already doing. We don't need to start something that is new. So building creative environments is a broad concept, and we've gone through this the last couple of weeks. We went through the first one, which was revealing the abundant life. Yep. The second one, see if anybody was listening. Second one was embracing all the generations, yes? And then this one, for those that have been diligently studying the vision that we've got, the vision booklet, is becoming. Becoming what? Becoming devoted followers of Jesus. Becoming devoted followers of Jesus. Now, this is what our statement says, reads underneath it, okay? And then I'm going to dive into it just a little bit so that we can sit there and maybe, instead of just getting the knowledge, but to actually impart it into our lives, to become familiar with it and to actually sit there and go, well, this is who we are. We are becoming. Now, I find it interesting that we didn't write become. Do you find that interesting? We as a collective unit could have easily written become devoted followers of Christ. But yet we chose in spirit meanings becoming, because I believe that there was a purpose behind that. I believe that we are always on a journey. That we don't get to the destination until we come face to face with our Creator. And in that, we have an opportunity to go on that invitation, to go on that journey daily. Now, this is what we wrote. Jesus said the greatest commandment was to love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. This is found in Luke 10:27. Our vision includes all of those who are followers of Jesus to become more like Jesus in love, maturity, generosity, and service. These are the marks of Christian maturity that we are pursuing as a church. Now, in Luke 10:27, Jesus is asking the question of a Christian expert. He's asking a question to see where his heart posture was and to see if he was actually listening, because Jesus had already said it. And this Christian expert comes back and he goes, exactly what I said before. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And in Matthew 22, this is when he actually tells the crowd. He turns around and he goes, Jesus replied, this is the greatest commandment for you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. Now, this has been our biblical platform for many, many years. We've had it laid up on at Stafford Street on both sides of the stage, sitting there going, what was it? Love God and love people. Yes. One of the things, we went on a journey, the eldership and the leadership went on a journey at the back end of last year, and I was prompted that I think we've missed a very vital part. A very vital part, because you listen to this, the second is equally important. Love your neighbour. Yes, we got that right. Love people. As yourself. As yourself. Now, this is the commandment from Jesus. We need to love ourselves. Now, I don't know how many people out there that will sit there and say, yeah, I can love people, I can do this, but when it comes to me, no, I'm not lovable. I can't love myself. Or I'm going to help people get to heaven. I'm going to help people be a good person. I'm going to feed them. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be able to show them who Christ is. But yet I don't accept who Christ is to me, or how God sees me. So love God, love others, which is people, love self. 3 things that I want to be able to sit there and impart, because if we are to become fully devoted followers of Jesus, and the way that I first started writing this sermon down this week was, well, we need to put rhythms in place. We need to have daily practices. We need to be able to do all of the things that actually draw us closer to God. But yet, if we've not surrendered our hearts to Him and ourselves to Him, how can we actually intake what we are reading, the knowledge that we are receiving, and the messages that we are hearing? Yeah? So there's 4 failures that I think we as a church, but I want to bring it down to we as individuals. In our walks, in our hurts, our pains, our experiences, may have experienced in some way, shape or form that has actually formed the way and who we are today when it comes to becoming fully devoted followers of Christ. Now, Peter Scazzero, he talks about this, and I've spoken about this heaps of times, and me and Rowan have dived into it a little bit. But the first one that he says is that we tolerate emotional immaturity. Now I'm going to expand on that. We tolerate immaturity as Christians. Christian, spiritual, emotional immaturity. We see it as that's just them, or it's okay. But how is that actually inviting people into growth? How is that actually yourself taking that invitation to maturity? So my first question, after the first question that I had before, was, would you describe yourself as a mature Christian? Would you describe yourself as a mature Christian? If you were standing in front of God right now, reality check, you are. When you search your heart of hearts, do you see yourself as a reflection of Jesus? Do you see yourself as a mature Christian? Now, honestly, that term feels sort of subjective, don't you think? What one person considers mature, another person might not. However, the Bible gives us a very, very good framework of what Christian maturity is. So if we are to become fully devoted followers of Christ, as we have put in our vision, we need to strive for maturity. Yeah? Doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your age. And in Ephesians 4:13, Paul perfectly describes this. Until we all reach unity in faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Loving God, loving others, loving self. Now, the Greek word translated as mature in Ephesians 4:13 is teleos. Now, it's interesting how they've actually translated this into English, because there are several meanings for teleos. Now, teleos means complete, perfect, brought to the end. Listen to that, brought to the end of full age. Now, we in our humanness, in our English language, in our postures, we tend to sit there and go, well, we're seen as mature because it says it on our driving license. We're seen as mature because we can respond to a certain situation. We're seen as mature because we're in some type of leadership, or we're married, or we're parents. We're seen as mature. But is that what teleos is actually stating? Spiritual maturity is God's goal for us. Now think about that for a moment. If God is inviting us continually, daily, and then his Son comes down and says, pick up your cross daily and follow me. And then we, now in 2022, are saying, become devoted followers of Christ. If God's goal for us is spiritual maturity, how do we first see ourselves before him? Now, next, that's the first point that I wanted to make. The next point that I want to make is our maturity. If it is so important to God, why does he allow us? Well, I know this, but he allows us into our life. He allows trials into our life to grow our faith, to test us, to see what choices we're going to make, to see if we're going to be able to take the invitations. And we find this in James 1. He says this, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Does that ring a bell? With teleos, you'll be perfect and complete. I know for me, my personal journey, when I go through trials, I just go, oh, I just can't do it anymore. And I want to give up in some way, shape or form, because that's my humanness. But God is actually inviting me on a journey, inviting me into growth, inviting me to, as you've heard me speak about before, to sit in that wall, not to bounce off the wall. To be able to grow through, because there is beauty as it was resurrected on the other side of that wall. But in our humanness, we tend to go, hit the wall and go, that's hurting. That's hurting. That's hurting. It's too hard. I can't do it. Instead of sitting and going, God, what are you trying to show me? Where is this growth that is actually happening that you're inviting me into? Because out of that growth, we are not seeing, Jesus is seeing. Resurrected into something beautiful. That's why I love that song. If our maturity is so important to God, perhaps we should take our trials and our invitations a little bit more seriously. But how can we know that if we are growing spiritually? What does it look like to be a mature Christian? What does it look like? Now, I'm not saying that it's limited to these characteristics, but I'm hoping that maybe some of you guys go, yep, I do that, yep, I do that, yep, I do that. So I want to encourage you, if you are doing the things that I'm about to bring up in the signs and your postures, I would encourage you to go further. But if you're not, don't see this as a judgment, see this as an invitation to maybe continue on the journey that God has got you in. All right? So the Bible gives us many marks of a growing believer, like perseverance and spiritual fruit. But the Bible specifically mentions the following 7 characteristics in conjunction with the word teleos. Remember, we restrict some words. Teleos means in various words, but we see it as maturity. First one that I want to bring to light is that a mature Christian, a person that is on the road, recognizes the difference between right and wrong, then does what is right. Recognizes the difference between right and wrong, then does what is right. This is seen in Hebrews 5:14. Number 2 is that a mature Christian, or somebody who's on seeking more and more of God, is not easily swayed by false teaching. We see this in Ephesians 4:13. They are so grounded in the truth of God's word. A mature Christian quickly recognizes falsehood. Now, if you haven't picked that up, what I was saying before, that all starts with our identity, ourself. We need to love ourselves, see ourselves how God sees us. Because if we see ourselves as God sees us, we will be able to recognize false teaching. We'll be able to recognize the wolf in sheep's clothing. We'll be able to recognize somebody who's not breathing life and light, and be able to know where you stand with God. Here's something that I'll just go down this rabbit hole. Here's something that has been very, very prevalent to me, is that a lot of the times the wolf in the sheep's clothing for me has been staring back at me in the mirror. Unfortunately, in the way that I see myself, in the way that I posture myself, in the way that I present, unfortunately, I tell myself lies, and I believe those lies, then prevents me from actually stepping into where God is calling me on a daily basis. Now, Ephesians 4:13 is fantastic, or it's 14-16 actually, is fantastic for our characteristics of mature Christian. And the third one I brought out of Ephesians 4 as well, and it is rooted in love. Rooted in love. Our words and our actions flow from love. If you are a mature Christian, our words are like a double-edged sword. Doesn't matter the circumstances. Our words are wise. Our words breathe life instead of death, even in the heat of the moment. And the fourth one that I also got from Ephesians 4, and it says this: they serve the church, not just the local church, they serve God's bride. Yep, Jesus' bride, his intended purpose. A Christian cannot grow in their full potential apart from a vital connection to his bride. We must find our place of mutual service and encouragement with like-minded people that actually encourage us to grow, that actually highlight things that maybe we don't see, but actually nurture us in a space that is safe for God to do his work rather than human work. The fifth one out of these 7 characteristics I pulled from Philippians 3:13-15, and it says, and this is what I pulled out of it, is that a Christian A mature Christian lives with an eternal perspective. The reality of the spiritual and eternal drives the mature Christian's life. They purposefully strive to continual spiritual growth because they know that this life that we live is temporary. They don't strive for what people can see. They strive for what God can see. 6:1 this morning comes from James 3, and it is they control their tongue. We wanted to be devoted followers of Jesus and leak Jesus. We need to control our tongue. This is the second one that comes from it, is that if a Christian has good control of their speech, speaks with wisdom and love, you know that they are on the path of maturity. I'm going to repeat that. You don't know that they've met the end. You don't know that they are fully mature. You know that they are on the path of maturity. If in any instance they are speaking with wisdom and love. And the seventh one this morning, if you're writing it down, is they reflect God's character. We find this in Matthew 5:48. They reflect God's character to the world. God wants us to grow in spiritual maturity in order to reflect his character, the one that was modeled through his Son, and the one that is going to save the world in any instance. Now, I've went into that. We tolerate immaturity. Now, the next thing that I want to highlight is that we emphasize doing for God over being with God. And a lot of the times we sit there and say that for us to become devoted followers of Jesus, we need to do. Why do you think burnout is so high in churches? Why do you think there's people that are going, well, what's the point in church? Why do you think that there is people that have a disconnect, especially when they go through trials in their lives? Because they see church as something that they need to actually do. Whereas God, he asks us to let our doing for his bride be the overflow of the relationship with him. Be the overflow of the relationship with him. Not an obligation, but a privilege. Yeah? Here's what I brought up before. Is that one of the only things God actually asks us to do was the Bible verse that I said earlier. If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. Listen to it in the Aramaic. If you need to close your eyes so you can take in these words, listen to it out of Matthew 16, out of the Aramaic. It says this: Then Jesus said to his disciples, if you truly want to follow me, you should at once completely reject and disown your own life. That doesn't mean that you need to push away yourself, because you need to love yourself. It's your own sinful nature. And you must be willing to share my cross and experience it as your own. As you continually surrender to my ways. For if you choose self-sacrifice and lose your lives for my glory, you will continually discover true life. You remember 2 weeks ago I spoke about abundant life. True life. Does that resonate with that? You will discover true life. But if you choose to keep your lives for yourselves, you will forfeit what you try to keep. I'll repeat that again. If you choose to keep your lives for yourselves, you will forfeit what you try to keep. That is emphasizing doing over being with God. We need to understand what God is doing in our lives. The next one that Pete Scazzero speaks about is he speaks about that we ignore the treasures of church history. Now, I want to go one further. We tend to ignore what we have learned in the past, our experiences. But we don't tend to ignore them because they may be painful, or we just forget about them, if you're in my case, where I've got a really bad memory. But we tend to not grow from them. That's where the wall comes in. But we also, if we're not identifying the things that are actually holding us back from experiencing the abundant life, what God wants us to experience, we are attached, they're a foothold to what God has actually got prepared for us in advance. So this is what Pete Scazzero is speaking about, is aimed at the church, and also the church, and also the church. Whether it is arrogance, pride, or pain, in all of those three instances, what has gone before has laid the platform of where you are, how you respond to situations, individually, personally, and also as a church. Here's the thing. We need to locate, highlight, and transform from those experiences. We need to locate, highlight, and transform the things that may be holding us back from experiencing and being devoted followers of Christ and leaking Jesus. What has gone before does not hold us back. But we need to also be not afraid of change in the process, or not afraid of what might be highlighted. We also need to deal with those strongholds that I was talking about, and I touched on it last week, of our family of origin. Those things in our generational past that might be actually hindering what God is trying to highlight in our future, in what he's calling us to be in a transformational way. Yeah? That's the fourth one that Pete Scazzero highlights. The last one is something that I'm still working through, because our humanness always counter-cultures this. And he highlights this: we define success wrongly. We define success wrongly within the church, within our lives. We define success not as a biblical basis. Now, the way God sees it is simple, is really, really simple. Now listen to this. I said this at the beginning of the year. How God sees success is to be who God has created us to be. I'm going to make that a little bit more personal. To be who God has created you to be. And to do what God has called you to do. In his way and in his time. I'll repeat that again. To be who God has created you to be. And to do what God has called you to do. In his way and in his time. That is the definition of success. Are you doing that? Are you stepping into that? Are you taking that invitation? Now, I've got three questions that I want to leave you with as we wrap up this morning. There's three questions that I don't want you just to go, yeah, they're questions that I'll revisit. I want you to actually meditate, spend some time with God, and actually search your heart for the answers, not to just go, yep, that's the way that I see it. But before I do, Rowan, when he first, when the Geddes family first came here, Rowan was already on a journey. And in that journey, there was three words that I've been sitting with since he brought it to my attention at the beginning of last year. And it was part of his journey, but I actually don't think it was just for him. Sorry for that, Ro. I actually think that it was for anybody who comes in contact with Rowan and Jules. And these three words is slow, few, and deep. Now, they may mean different to you, but I actually think there is some absolute pockets of gold in those three simple words. They counterculture everything that the world tells us to do. Slow, counterculture is what the world tells us that we need it now. We need it yesterday. We see something, we see a ministry, we see an environment, we see something and we want it now. But maybe God's calling us that there is a process for us to obtain what he has prepared before us. Maybe he's preparing us on that way. Few could be your boundaries into, you want to be involved in everything. You don't, because you're trying to figure out where God's got you, but maybe he's asking you just to slow down, keep things few, just so that you can sit with him and be who he has created you to be, his son, his daughter, and deep. For us to become fully devoted followers of Jesus, to reflect and leak Jesus, it is a deep and painful process sometimes, but it is necessary. If we are just doing surface level work in ourselves and not reaching deep underneath the surface, then all people are experiencing is surface level stuff that only can be supplied by human ability. If we choose to go deep, and it may not be painful, we just may not have actually gone down, but it may be painful in that instance, is that molding shape, that molding work that needs to happen deep. So the 3 questions that I want you to go deep with. First one is this, and ask yourself very honestly, am I fully present or am I distracted by what life is placed before me? Am I present to what God is doing, or am I distracted by the things that are around me? The things that I have to do, the things that I have to achieve, the things that need to happen. Am I fully present to what God is doing in every step of my day? Second one is, and I want you to think of a really bad moment, maybe a moment that maybe brought out the worst in you. And then ask yourself, am I loving or am I judging? Am I showing who God is, or am I reacting in my humanness? And the third one this morning, and this is vital for us to actually be transformed into who God has got us. Am I open or am I closed to being changed? Have I surrendered or have I barricaded? Am I open or am I closed to the transformation that God is wanting to take us on, to take you on? Let me pray. Lord, I just thank you for who you are. I want to thank you for the invitation that you continually give us, even though a lot of the times we deny you, not because we know that we can do it better, but because in our humanness we try to do it on our own. Lord, this morning, I want to pray for you to reveal to us how we can surrender ourselves completely to you, individually. Lord, I pray that you highlight things in our lives that maybe we have found difficulty to hand over to you, whether it be relationships, whether it be a physical activity that we've got, whether it be something that is holding us back from actually experiencing you. I pray that you highlight them right now. I pray that as we step into becoming fully devoted followers of you, that it's not just about the actions that we do, the rhythms that we take, the things that we place into our everyday, it's the little choices. The ability to be able to see the invitation and to actually invite you into our lives, because the relationship is what you want. So, Lord, as we go out of here this morning, I pray that you have impacted us, not by the words that I've said, but because you are transforming our hearts, that we identify the invitations of the everyday. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Make sure you join us for a cup of coffee next week. Remember, invite your friends, invite your family. It's going to be a special service as well as a lunch afterwards. But other than that, have a fantastic week, and I'm hoping that I see you guys during the week. See you later.